Ben gets one more try at bats. Here's your look at the brand new McFarlane toys, DC Multiverse, The Flash movie, Batman. Under the guise of the masked vigilante Batman, billionaire Bruce Wayne has not only stepped out of the shadows to become the reluctant leader of the Justice League, but is also a friend and mentor to teammate Barry Allen. Having experienced loss on personal, local, and global fronts, Bruce is a source of unparalleled knowledge and understanding to the Flash in his superhero journey. With Affleck in action one last time as the Caped Crusader, let's grab the tape measure just to see how tall this version of Batman stands. And again, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of the Ben Affleck Batman, who from what we hear apparently isn't going to be in the Flash movie very long at all, which is a bit of a shame. Still though, this version of Batman is just a little over 7 inches in height, or the figure's going to be about 18 centimeters tall. And we don't even know if these two Batmen actually do meet up at all in the movie. If they don't, though, here's the two figures side to side. Michael Keaton's Batman to the left, Ben Affleck's Batman to the right. Different designs, certainly when it comes to suit. Two different approaches when it came to the Caped Crusader's suit. You can see that Michael Keaton's a little bit more streamlined when Ben Affleck's Batman suit was a little bit more practical, more of a swatter, heavily armed suit. Here's also what the figures look like with Flash. Again, the more I look at this Flash, the more I don't mind the look of him. It's just, again, like the fact that his ears, that he's missing something from the sides that would give him a little bit more character to the cowl. Other than that, though, it's not a bad-looking Flash. He is, in this case, actually about the same size as Ben Affleck's Batman, but because Michael Keaton, of course, has longer ears on his cowl, he is really the highest figure, the tallest figure of the three. What's a bit of a bummer about this Batman is the fact that the figure doesn't come included with any other accessories than just a pair of swapped-out hands. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. In the meantime, though, let's first have a look at the trading card. And once again, we're getting an illustration here. I want to bring in the earlier looked at cards. Here's what it looked like with Flash's card. Here's also what it looked like with the Michael Keaton card. These two Batmen, of course, side to side. It really, again, is less a still from the movie, and it isn't even figure photography. Sort of an illustration instead. And again, I'm okay with that. Flip around in this case, the back of the card, in fact, does still say Bruce Wayne. And there's a little paragraph read you can read for yourself. From what I'm understanding, at least from the back of the card, it looks like Bruce Wayne has stepped up the plate to become the leader of the Justice League. Whether there's even a mention of Superman in the movie, we'll only know when the movie comes out. Gonna move those cards to the side. Of course, Batman always does get himself, any other DC Multiverse figure always comes included in the same display stand. DC logo down below here, again, one neighboring peg to the corner that can plug into the underside of Batman's boots. Move that aside. Like I said, though, the figure doesn't come included with any accessories other than just a pair of swapped out hands. The hands themselves in this case are, again, just punching hands, closed fists. Not going to be really good for anything. I could probably use some of the accessories from the earlier looked at Justice League Batmans. We've had a look at, in fact, a couple of Affleck Batmans from DC Multiverse line. I probably could use some of the accessories from either one of those figures to display with this Batman, or I'm probably going to just end up mounting this guy on top of his Bat Cycle, something we're going to be also looking at in an upcoming review. Picking the figure up, though, at Ben Affleck's Batman, all in all, it's not a bad-looking Batman. There's kind of one thing I certainly would mention, though, when it comes to designing of his suits. One thing right away I can tell you is that the coloring of the cowl, at least the gray portion here of his neck and his head, doesn't seem to be making any other appearances anywhere else on the figure. There's, yes, dark gray, but it doesn't seem to be as dark of a gray as the head or the neck piece to the cowl. I also will say, like, one of the big things picking this figure out of his packaging first time, I did notice it right away that his head seems very much larger than the proportions for the rest of his body. If you look at just his body alone, and omit for a second the fact that his head sculpt is there, like the proportions of his Batman's body does look pretty good in frame and pretty good in size. The length of his arms, I think, are about in par or in ratio to the rest of the figure's body, but I can't help but notice the fact that Batman's head seems a little bit too big for his body. Head sculpt wise, it looks like Ben Affleck, but I almost feel like the original Justice League ones that we looked at before from DC Multiverse did a better job of doing Ben. You can get still the vibe and still look that, like, it does look like Ben Affleck, but it looks like Ben Affleck almost faded. Like the skin coloring that they used for his mouth, and then you got the coloring of his cowl, almost does give him, in some ways, sort of more of a washed out look. There's really no sharp lines dividing around the opening of his cowl, for example. And I find also like his eyes are too light of a color or too close of a color to the rest of his cowl that they don't look like they stand out. Again, when you're looking at it from a distance, it almost looks like his cowl and his headpiece, his head sculpt, is just too faded to really stand out or have anything really notably standing out for the front of the figure's face. One thing also, too, you can see as well, is while they have colored in the mouth, he almost it seems to have a little bit of almost more of a grayish tint to just above his lip. Now, you could say that's a little bit of stubble. I might even say, like, I think the skin tone of Ben Affleck's Batman might be a little bit too pale. And maybe, again, that's why I'm getting the read that when I'm looking at his head, everything kind of looks sort of, I don't want to say washed out, but it doesn't have very much of a sharp, definitive look to it, the details on the face, especially like the eyes. The eyes are the one thing that I feel like don't really stand out well enough here on this figure. Cowl-wise, from a sculpt standpoint, it does look good. Again, you got the shorter cowl points, the ear points there on Ben Affleck's Batman cowl. And again, like it's a continuation of the same gray that he has down to the shoulders. Where here, though, all of a sudden it gets just so abruptly stopped. You got like the darker color here for the top of his torso. You can make out there's a bat emblem, but with so much other stuff going on here, it's so busy in the torso that it's almost even hard at times to see the Ben Affleck Bat logo, which is obviously a bit bigger than the Michael Keaton's Batman, which also did have the benefit of having the yellow in the background. This one just sort of blends into the rest of the background with it. One thing also with this particular Batman, too, is that the color that the figure depicts it as sort of gives it more of the look that it's gray and black, where I think most of the images we've seen so far, speculation has been made that the bat suit in that at least Ben wears in the movie seems to be more of almost a bluish tint and less the gray that we get right here. I think the gray works a little bit better for an on-screen Batman. I don't think blue would work or translate as well. Of course, I say that without the movie actually coming out first. He does have, again, like a lot of armor here on his on his suit. It's not as much the armor, or it's a little bit different of an approach when it comes to the armor than, say, his tactical suit that he had in Justice League. In Justice League, it sort of looked like his existing Batman suit with sort of plates over top of it. This looks like a brand new redesigned suit. So he has things like, for example, a much more decoratively detailed forearm, for example. And you'll notice he has all like these additional like straps and things that kind of keep the armor pieces in place. There is no real color here, unfortunately. There seems to only just be the dark color of the plastic. The darker, obviously, plastic here is not quite the same color as you get for the lower half of his body. He does have, again, like all of these little leg plates and things that would cover over and protect his body. But like there's really no differentiating colors. Like all of it's just sort of gray and a lot of the same similar black. He has a little bit of a breakup here, as he does have the utility belt, which is a different color than the rest of his suit. Sort of gives us kind of a very dingy sort of yellowish color, which isn't actually represented here on the back of the figure's body. Now, I don't know based on whether in the movie he's supposed to actually have a utility belt that's colored all the way around, as you only really see the pockets here on the front as being the only place that actually is colored on the utility belt. Batman does also have a couple of these little straps here on the side, which I'm guessing is supposed to attach to the top of the thigh, but just simply because of the articulation needs to be there on the figure, they decide to have it loose. When I first took it out, it actually looked for a second like he had all these little pocket compartments on the side of the utility belt. Actually, it does almost look like, now that I'm seeing it, it looks like it's supposed to have snapped right here. It's not broken, but they deliberately left the gap space right there so you would be able to rotate the thigh, you would be able to hinge the leg. But I guess in the movie, these two are supposed to be attached together. Again, it's not a bad looking Batman. One thing I really also like about this one is, like the Keaton we looked at before, he's actually using a cloth cape. The cloth cape does seem to stick to itself, and I do like the idea that you have a more natural drape with the cape. Oh, I just realized I rhymed. Instead of actually using a plastic cape. The original Justice League Batman, Ben Affleck Batmans, all would have then used a plastic cape. So it's kind of a nice treat to get ourselves a fabric cape for a change. It's a good looking figure, but the only thing I would certainly say from it is, like, I feel like it's just to hold it back a little bit so you guys can actually see what it looks like from head to toe. I almost just, again, feel like the head may be a little bit too big for the rest of his body. If the head was just a little bit smaller, or maybe not even as much smaller as maybe just a little shorter, maybe it would work a little bit better. And it also looks like his neck may be a little bit too long, that I feel while looking at the figure, it's throwing the proportions off for the rest of him. And he almost kind of comes across a little too short and squat, when I think really the rest of his body, if again, just to hold it like this, I think the body is fine, but I think maybe the head is maybe just a tad bit too big. For the articulation on Ben Affleck's Batman, we're going to start once again with the head sculpt. It is on a ball joint, so it rotates all the way around. You can have it looking up, quite high, in fact. I mean, look how high of a reach he actually can get for that. And he does also look down. You can also rock it back and forth also as well. For the shoulders, even though I thought there may be limitations just because he's got the shoulder pads on the tops there, but in actual fact, he can easily move his arms out at 90 degrees. You can take those arms and again, rotate them all the way around. Figure does have a bicep swivel. which is again a little harder to actually get to. There we go. Rotate that back around. The figure does have a double hinge on the elbow, and he does also have a rotation in the hands back and forth. Still, I probably would have used the plastic myself just to take a departure away from the articulation on the figure so I can actually straighten out the arms. I would have probably used less the plastic to produce closed fists, and instead rather use the plastic to give him accessories instead. Upper torso is on a ball joint, so you can rotate that freely around. He does also have a ball joint at the base of the abdomen, so you can also hinge that up and down as well and rock it back and forth. Batman does also have ratcheted thighs. At the tops of the thighs, at least, you can see that they do hinge out at about almost a full split. You can take those legs and move them forward. You can move him back. He has a mild swivel at the top of the thigh. The figure does also possess a double hinge on the knee. Very large also knee pads. Let me just stop for a second, draw your attention to the size of his knee pads. It doesn't limit at all the articulation, but it certainly does cover over a lot of his knee when you get the figure standing straight. He does have no articulation here for the boots. The shin guards you can see is just simply a continuation sculpt for the rest of the lower leg, but he does have at least ankle pivots, so you can move it back and forth this way. You can rock back and forth Ben Affleck's feet, and you can also, he gets toe articulation like the earlier looked at Michael Keaton. Again, like looking at the figure, just to put him down straight here for a second, and to reach off camera and bring in the Michael Keaton Batman that we looked at before. You know, I think between the two, I like Keaton's suit a little bit more. I mean, that of course is me only not seeing the movie just yet. I like the look of Affleck's from a practical standpoint, but some of it does certainly get lost. Like the logo, for example, the bat logo here on the front of his suit. I mean, you don't even notice for a second that it's there until you sort of look at it a little bit closer and you realize there's still a bat outline around the emblem, but it gets sort of lost with all the armor that he's actually got over top of his suit. And I feel, again, like when we've seen images of Ben Affleck, stills, of course, so again, take that with a grain of salt. I think even in the stills, the suit comes across almost with more of a blue read to it, not necessarily the dark grays and blacks that we get here with the figure. While it would have made things better for Ben to actually have something to come include with the figure, short of just some punching hands, gripping hands, I think is actually more designed so that the figure will eventually mount the bat bike, something that the McFarlane team is selling separately, something that we will be looking at in an upcoming review. I suppose I probably could just use accessories from another Batman for right now, but I think I'm planning to probably have this guy displayed on the shelf, mounting on top of his bat bike. That bat bike looks really cool. I can't wait to actually get that one opened up. But when it comes back to the designing of Ben Affleck's batsuit, again, we only have really stills from the movie and we only have the trailer. You can kind of freeze it for yourself and kind of get a good somewhat idea of what Ben Affleck's suit's going to look like for the one last outing he's going to be as the Caped Crusader. Translating that to, of course, a figure, we only really have the better chance to really look at the suit when we have it here in a plastic articulated figure, courtesy of the folks over at McFarlane Toys. There's things I like about this suit. There's things I'm not as crazy about. Certainly, when it comes to designing of this suit, this version of Bruce Wayne designs it more for a purpose. It doesn't have to look sleek. It doesn't have to look like a continuous suit. Something like Keaton would have designed his suit. Ben Affleck clearly wants this to be an armored, protecting suit. So he's not going to be hurting himself, not going to be getting injured when he's battling crime. Things I like about this suit is the fact that this one, well, from a figure standpoint, does have a cloth cape. Cloth capes I'm really loving so far. I mean, most of the time we've usually gotten plastic capes on a lot of these figures, so it's a nice break to get a fabric cape for a change. From a design standpoint of the suit, there's a lot of busy stuff going on here. He has like a lot of leg plates, he's got a chest plate, he's got arm plates. It doesn't look as continuous or seamless, I would say, as the tactical suit he had for Justice League. That Justice League tactical suit I thought worked really well. Here we kind of get sort of an amalgamation, like a combination of many things all coming together. Unfortunately, by having a big chest piece all done in molded black plastic, it so happens to be the same coloring of plastic they use for the bat emblem. The bat emblem, unfortunately, as big as it always has been, gets lost. Unfortunately, with the black plastic being the same color. And because that's also black plastic, the cowl and the neck that continues from the cowl looks almost separate from the rest of the figure's body, because all the gray that's then below it has to then, again, you got that big chest piece of plastic sort of intersecting the top of his head to the rest of the figure's body. I don't know how I really feel about this bat suit. I'm probably looking back on it when, after it's all said and done, the movie has come out. I'm probably not going to put this one really high on my all-time favorite bat suits, but it's certainly going to be interesting to see how Ben Affleck's Batman, wraps up his role of playing the Caped Crusader. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. Do you also feel like maybe the figure's head is a little bit too big for the rest of the figure's body? And overall, how do you guys feel about the idea of Ben Affleck coming back one last time to be the Caped Crusader? I hope at some point he is actually going to meet up with Michael Keaton's Batman, but from what I'm hearing, Ben Affleck's Batman is barely going to be in it, and Michael Keaton's Batman is going to be in a completely different multiverse. I don't even think the two Batmans are going to intermingle with one another, which is kind of a bit of a bummer. I would have hoped if they could have brought back Affleck and they could have brought back Keaton, that at some point they would have shared the same screen time. But again, we won't even know until the movie comes out. Big thank you, though, to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that took the time and did provide the sample of brand new Flash movie, Ben Affleck's Batman, that we could have a look at in this review. And again, segueing that over to an upcoming review, we will be also looking at the Bat cycle that's going to go along with this version of Batman. If you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and on board to see the rest of the Flash movie line, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and then make sure you're turning on the bell notification. There's going to be a lot more videos coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.